few years back. Even Oprah was on board with The Secret. Um, but that's where the ideas from The Secret come. They come from these people and this movement. And it continues to be spread by, uh, through literature, in the works of uh, people like Neil, for instance, and his conversations with God. Uh, I'm talking about Neil Donald Walsh, by the way, and his very popular series of books, Conversations with God, in which a very different idea of what God is presented, which is along the lines of metaphysical, spiritual thought. Also, the Celestine Prophecy. These were big bestsellers. Uh, James Redfield's very popular series of books. These were big bestsellers in the 90s, and that sort of continued the New Thought ideas. The Secret is more recent than that. But today, the New Thought magazines continue through Unity, which is a church that came out of the New Thought movement. They publish the Daily Word. And Religious Science, which we talked a bit about last week, which publishes Science of Mind. And so these ideas continue, and now we have endless websites devoted to such things. And as we begin to find corroboration in science for the idea of mind power, if you will, it becomes more and more, as Mr. Williams was saying, a force to be reckoned with. I'm paraphrasing. He said it in his own way, but that's what he meant. And it is. It's becoming an understanding which is important for people to have. So, quantum physics has been changing what the scientific worldview is. And so scientific worldview, as they come to accept the provability of such things in quantum physics, comes closer to this idea of the mind creating, if you will. So there's an article here in Discover magazine about just such a thing, and how scientists are beginning to understand that quantum physics has an effect, and maybe actually the effect that drives biological processes such as photosynthesis. If you remember your science from elementary school or high school, photosynthesis is the process in which sunlight is absorbed by plants and turned into food or energy for them. And what they're discovering now is that this is a process that is largely driven by quantum physics. So let me read to you about this, and I think it'll become a little bit clearer. On the face of things, quantum mechanics and the biological sciences don't mix. Biology focuses on larger scale processes, from molecular interactions between proteins and DNA up to the behavior of organisms as a whole, whereas quantum mechanics describes the often strange nature of electrons, protons, muons, and quarks, the smallest of the small. So the scientific worldview previously held, that biological processes were pretty straightforward, with one reaction getting another in a very linear, predictable way. But quantum physics is much fuzzier, and the effects are not so predictable or linear when you're dealing with subatomic particles that are also waves. A dancing electron is both a tangible nugget and an oscillation of energy. Larger objects also exist in particle and wave form, but the effect is not noticeable in the macroscopic world. In other words, in the larger world, we don't see the oscillation of energy. We don't see the dual nature, the tangible nugget and the oscillation of energy. Quantum mechanics holds that any given particle has a chance of being in a whole range of locations and, in a sense, occupies all those places at once. So that's the idea of omnipresence, being everywhere at once. Physics describe quantum reality in an equation they call the wave function, which reflects all the potential ways a system can evolve. Until a scientist measures the system, a particle exists in its multitude of locations. But at the time of measurement, the particle has to choose just a single spot. In other words, the scientist, the observer, in observing the particle, forces the particle to choose one thing to become. The quantum physicists say probability narrows to a single outcome and the wave function collapses, sending ripples of certainty through space and time. So it becomes something by the very focusing of attention upon it. Imposing certainty on one particle could alter the characteristics of any others it has been connected with, and even if those particles are now light years away. So that's part of that butterfly effect that we talked about, the chaos effect, that when you focus as the observer and force the particle to become one thing and send that certainty through space and time, then that changes everything else that this particle may have been connected to, anywhere it might be. As in a game of dominoes, alteration of one particle affects the next one, and so on. The implications of all of this are mind-bending. In the macro world, a ball never spontaneously shoots itself over a wall. In the quantum world, though, an electron in one biomolecular might hop to a second biomolecular, even though classical laws of physics hold that the electrons are too tightly bound to leave. The phenomena of hopping across seemingly forbidden gaps is called quantum tunneling. From tunneling to entanglement, the special properties of the quantum realm allow events to unfold at speeds and efficiencies that would be unachievable with classical physics alone. Could quantum mechanisms be driving some of the most elegant and inexplicable processes of life? For years, experts doubted it. Quantum phenomena typically revealed themselves only in lab settings, in vacuum chambers, chilled to near absolute zero. Biological systems are warm and wet. Most researchers thought the thermal noise of life would drown out any quantum weirdness that might rear its head. But now, new experiments keep finding quantum processes at play in biological systems, says Christopher Altman, a researcher at the Kavli Institute of Nanoscience in the Netherlands. With the advent of powerful new tools like femtosecond lasers, it's femtosecond is a 10 to 15 second laser, and nanoscale precision positioning, life's quantum dance is finally coming into view. So they're able to see how the quantum dance, as they call it, how quantum particles and wave particles are affecting things like photosynthesis. Fascinating. I'm going to put this article up and post it on my Facebook page as well. But it all dovetails back into this idea of mind power in one way or the other. The mind power that's, talked about going back to this new thought movement and continues to be talked about in the offshoots of new thought. So, as popularity continues, I mentioned The Secret, which is really popular. I mentioned some of the popular books of the 90s. In Canada, there's a gentleman by the name of John Cahill who teaches about mind power basics. He's got a website, learnmindpower.com. I'll post that one too. Uh, and just a little bit of what he has to say. His phrase here is, "A new life is but a new mind." If you want to make changes in your life, you must look to the causes, and the causes are almost always the way you are using your mind, the way you are thinking. You cannot think both negative and positive thoughts at the same time. One or the other will dominate. I'm not sure I believe that. I think that we are able to hold a lot of thoughts in our minds, but what he does say at the beginning is has a lot of truth to it. All physical reality is made up of vibrations of energy. That's what we were just talking about there. Your thoughts too are vibrations of energy. This is not a concept or theory, but rather the startling new reality that quantum physics now reveals to us. Your thoughts have a powerful influence. They affect what happens to you. To know this is to know something great. Mind power is directing your thoughts toward a desired outcome. Well, yes. And so, again, the questions and the controversy over some of these theories, continues. In other words, if you direct your mind power toward a desired outcome, given the nature of the quantum dance, you have no guarantee or certainty of the outcome, because it's not linear in any way. It's in fact the exact opposite of that. So while you can hold positive thoughts, and should, and while you can sort of have a vision of what you would like to create, the ability to create that is going to be much more complex. And what ultimately occurs may be a lot different from the intention. Let's just say that. All right, we're running a little short on time here, so I want to get into one of the three main continuing organizations that has come from New Thought, and this is Divine Science, which was created in 1898. And was created in Denver, and now has churches in the U.S. and abroad. Divine Science is the idea of basically an organized, well, they call themselves an organized teaching pertaining to God and the manifestation of God in creation. And it holds that its foundation of truth is limitless being, God is good, is equally present everywhere, and is the all of everything, and defines God as pure spirit, absolute, changeless, eternal, manifesting in and as all creation, and yet also transcending creation, and that evil is therefore neither necessary nor permanent, and has no reality within itself, but has existence only so long as human beings support it by believing it. So, like other New Thought churches, healing is very important. And the founder of this church is a woman, a fascinating woman by the name of Nona Brooks. She lived from 1861 to 1945 and is described as the prophet of modern mystical Christianity, or a prophet of such. And she created the movement after being exposed to New Thought philosophy. And having moved from West Virginia to Denver, that's where she began the Divine Science movement. Now, unlike some of the earlier manifestations of this, including, religious science, there's never been any kind of real controversy